Well, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. Okay, the economy and the recession. Is the worst over? That's our sub-conversation point this morning. We are assured that that is indeed the case by the central bank governor. By the fourth quarter, which I understand is beginning in October, by the end of the fourth quarter, we should be seeing a bit of light at the end of the channel. Well, our stockbroker and economist, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, is here again. Thank you very much for coming on. He's MD of Cowrie Asset Management Limited. You reassured, because it's your territory, your line of business, the good news that the worst is over, and we should be noticing it, that fact, by the end of the fourth quarter. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't really know how I feel about that. I believe that the government has been jarred into action, both at the fiscal and at the monetary side of the government economic management teams, by the sharp drop or the sharp contraction in the GDP in the second quarter of this year. I believe now the onus is on all of them to fight to ensure that the economy begins to recover. But whether the timeline for that recovery is going to be the fourth quarter of this year is what I'm not certain. I believe now, even the president was saying that they would do everything to make sure the economy comes out of the doldrum. The Senate president, the Senate regime yesterday said they're also going to, if there's need for emergency, they will also approve that. And I know the MPC, at the MPC meeting, the governor of Central Bank dwelt on the issue of growth and inflationary pressure, and it's also cognizance of the need for the economy to begin to grow. So, but I think it might be difficult for anybody to predict accurately when the country will come out of recession, particularly because all that we're hearing are ideas of what will be done. The implementations of those ideas are yet to start. We're talking of stimulus. We've not seen the stimulus. It's not been implemented. We didn't see a rate cut on the monetary side. And we have not seen the expected dollar inflows that will help stabilize the exchange rate.
How about the suggestion that we should sell some of our oil joint venture assets and then, pump this back into infrastructure and thereby begin to reflate the economy? How is that going to work?
Well, I think the issue of selling of national assets has to be put in proper context. I support the sale of national assets on certain conditions. And those conditions are critical for me to have my support. I'm not a decision maker in this instance, but as a citizen of this country, as a key stakeholder in this country, I can express my own feelings. The sale of the issue is not just to sell the assets. If we're going to sell the assets, it must be a clear classification from one asset class to another asset class, and a clear classification to an asset class that has the capacity to create economic activities. Today, the country earns about 1 billion to 1.5 billion dividend annually from our investment, 51% stake in Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas Company. If you want to value that company or value Nigeria's share of LNG, NLNG, and you use the earnings method or the dividend payment method, and even use 20 times multiple, you'll be talking of saying that maybe the country's investment in NLNG is about $20 billion. If we're going to realize $20 billion, for instance, from selling our stake in that asset, remember the government still has the capacity to tax the earnings from that infrastructure. Then, and we are going to invest that $20 billion in critical infrastructure that has the capacity to expand economic activities, then I will support that sale. If the sale is just to inject liquidity into government coffers for distribution to the 3 tiers of government, I will absolutely oppose the sale, because it simply means what we are doing is akin to picking the chicken that lays the golden egg and then saying, okay, let me kill the egg once and kill the chicken once and extract all the eggs. But if what we are doing is to invest, for instance, if we realize $20 billion and we're going to use that $20 billion exclusively to build the Lagos Kano standard gauge rail, which is about $8.3 billion, and the Lagos Calabar standard gauge rail, and we devote this money entirely for these 2 corridors of standard gauge rail, we're going to create an economic resource, an economic asset that has the capacity to grow economic activities, including agriculture, manufacturing, and whatever you have you, along those two corridors that will, in the next few years, generate enough foreign exchange earnings, enough revenues, enough tax income, enough employment as to compensate for the foregone dividend income that we would have earned from the investment in LNG.
And of course, it sounds and looks so good on paper. I suppose the problem is going to be the will, if at all, to be able to do precisely that, because there will be political pressures. You have funds, you have spending power, and there are pressures, aren't there, with all politicians, with all governments, to put some money where it isn't necessarily going to do the best economic good, such as you have outlined.
For me, we have a long history of turns and twists, failures and successes in this country, that by now we should have a body of knowledge that we can draw from. I'll give you a classical example. In 2006, before the end of Obasanjo's second term, he gave out the contract for the standard gauge at $8.3 billion. In 2007, when President Yar'Adua assumed power, he revoked that contract. When Obasanjo gave out the contract was to be drawn from a 20 billion reserve in excess crude. We would have still, after taking out that 8.3, we would have still have about 12 billion in excess crude for sharing. Yar'Adua annulled or cancelled that contract, and the money remained with excess crude account. What happened? Within a period of 4 or 5 years, the entire balance in excess crude account was frittered away, shared to the 3 tiers of government. We did not build a standard gauge then. The money is not anywhere to be seen. So if we have that memory that was not too distant, then, and we're in this situation, if you have that 20 billion and you give our contract, remember that 20 billion is, part of it will be paid as offshore payment to the contractors, assuming the contractors are foreign companies. But a large part of that money will still be trapped in the economy. The contractors will employ Nigerian labor, they will buy Nigerian cement, they buy Nigerian iron rod. They will create more pockets of economic activities, particularly the value chain that they require to build those infrastructure. And that will help create employment, improve the purchasing income of those that will be employed, increase the level of demand for goods and service from those that will be employed. And then these are the activities that will catalyze economic recovery. So you're going to do 2 things. You're building a critical infrastructure that will ultimately improve our cost of doing business as a country. You're also going to create employment and create economic activities and income that will help us come out of the crisis. For me, that is the route to go. It is not enough to sell the assets. The assets must be sold and exclusively reinvested in other assets that have multiplier effect on the economy other than just dividend income.
In fact, what you've just said, it really, sort of is highlighted by the experiences we've had. You said we seem to have short memories. And when we've gone down this route before, every time Nigeria Airways is there, Daily Times was there, Nikon is there, when we have been told that, look, we need to do this, it's the right economic thing to do. I'm not sure that till today we have gotten any of the benefits of what the intention was. So it all goes back to the will to do the right thing. In other words, there must be, as you have just described, a very, very strictly structured plan on what to do. Well, I imagine we don't really have much wiggle room. Do you think it's possible? It's not possible for people to deviate from the course. Politics, I know, is what it is, but it would seem to make sense that we are this time in a barracuda-infested swimming pool, and we just have to get out.
Well, the way I see it is that you have to look at leadership is everything.
Okay.
Success or failure of nations, institutions, be them corporate or social, are largely driven by the quality of leadership they have. Today, we have a leader with an ironclad personality. If instead of attributing the weakness of leadership to the president, you would actually attribute his inflexibility as a form of leadership.
Okay.
So if the president accepts to go this route and say, we're going to sell these assets, we're going to devote this money entirely for these projects, I don't think anybody will deviate from that.
Okay.
You understand? The key thing is that we need to convince him, and we need to make him see the big benefit of taking that route. So my challenge is not whether you have a president that has the capacity to take difficult decisions and stay the course. My challenge is to convince the president on some of these channels that seem to be his blind spot.
Okay, okay. How about the whole question of the liberalization? Again, I'm going back to Emefiele, the central bank governor, who opined that liberalization of the foreign exchange market, has begun to yield its dividends. What's your assessment of that comment?
Well, he said that we received a capital importation about more than $1 billion in July.
Okay, one second, please. Please hold the thought. I can come back to you. Mr. Tola has called in from Surulere. Good morning. I don't
Hello?
think... Yeah, good morning. You're holding us up. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for calling
My
in.
name is Tola.
Okay,
I'm calling from Surulere.
sure.
In respect, I have to greet in respect of the economic recession, I want to make a contribution. My contribution is this. And since inception of Nigeria, we have never had any economic growth. All we are just saying is that this economic recession, we don't have it. Because the problem of Nigeria is this. Any financial collapse of any country is inevitable. Only political solution can solve it. And now the political solution can solve it is that the president has been doing that, going to all the superpowers, going to all the economic good of the world, begging for the restoration of this country.
Mr. Tola, I think he's gone. I wanted to ask if he's been with us from the beginning, which I doubt. I doubt that he actually started with us, and I think he just had that opinion and wanted to drop it. And maybe as we started this program, he hasn't factored that into what the comment was. But you were saying?
Yes, the CBN governor said that we received about $1 billion in the month of July, which by our standard, given where we're coming from, is an improvement. But that is a drop in an auction. The amount we need to stabilize the foreign exchange market is materially more than that. And I don't think we're going to see very aggressive bid for Nigerian assets by foreign portfolio investors until certain things are achieved. Okay. One of which is that you must achieve FX stability. Second one is you must narrow the gap between the official rate and the parallel market rate. A huge gap between the official rate, in this instance, the interbank rate and the parallel market, is an indication that the currency will devalue further.
But sorry for interrupting you. I would have thought that's a no-brainer. What you've just said, even people who don't know anything about economics are saying that, look, you can't, as the Emir of Kano pointed out, you can't make it possible that a person can sit down in a chair, metaphorically speaking, take with right hand, and then double, triple, quadruple his profit in just without getting off his behind. It seems like a no-brainer. So maybe you can explain that a bit, please, so that people might understand what the problems are and why it is as complex as it is. But before then, I don't want to lose Daniel, who has come on the line from Kaduna. Good morning, Mr. Daniel.
Good morning, Mr. Yori.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Daniel calling from Kaduna. On the issue of economic recession, there are three fundamental things the government should do. One is security. Two is economy. The federal government on its own should go ahead and pay the salary on to people and forget the issue of trying to generate a loan to few people that could not even change 0.05% of the economy. These people, their salary, they go into poultry. People want to go into poultry. These are small and medium-scale enterprises. These are things that boost the economy. And you're telling people, how do you want them to go ahead? People are suffering. Their salary and let them get out of the situation. They're not asking you for a major loan. They're not asking you for anything. They just want to go ahead with a little salary they should get. And so I think we'll get out of this situation. Issue of monetary policy, these are long-term issues. You have a business today. You want to go and register a corporate affairs commission. I'm telling you, you'll be amazed. Those people there will make sure you don't register. That is the situation we find in this country. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Daniel, there's so many important things coming up. Mr. Daniel is as concerned as he is. Would you like to address that? Although I keep in mind what you were talking about before we went away. The opinion that Mr. Daniel has just expressed, I think it's pretty widespread, and this is something that's going to be one of the challenges, I think, for whoever is managing this economy.
That the government should try and pay salaries. You see, absolutely, even the Bible says that a laborer deserves his fair wage. The government, I find it difficult to reconcile why some governments or some governors fail to pay salaries. I have no doubt that the economy is tight, but I think that should be one of the priorities. In the first place, if you cannot carry on with the current staff strength of the government, it is better to downsize than to have people run 4, 5, 6 months, 7 months without paying them the salary. Because the question you ask yourself is that if this man is doing this job and you actually assume honestly the man is an honest person, lives on his salaries, and you not paid him salary for 5 months, what do you expect him to be doing? But in the first place, okay, in any case, to bring it to economic perspective, one of the reasons why the salary arrears occurred was because it took us so long a time to adjust the exchange rate. Because remember, the earnings into valuation account is in dollars. So the conversion rate determines how much naira that is available for government to share. This month, the month of September, for the allocation of, for the receipts of August, they are sharing about 500 billion. Previously, the figures had gone down to like 280 billion because at that point, the exchange rate used for the conversion was 197. Now with the exchange rate of about 300, the volume of naira distributable has gone up. And remember, government's obligations in naira, its income is in dollar. So the exchange rate becomes a key factor in determining how much that the government is able to generate in naira terms for distribution. So the delay also contributed to this. But the key things are at the realms of political structure. We have multiplicity of distribution units that are not productive units. And what do I mean by this? You have 704 local governments. Today, the last time I saw effectiveness in local government administration was in my university days in the 80s. From the state, in the state where I come from, the local governments have been moribund. They're not doing anything, but they're getting, I checked the location that my local government got. It's something million the previous month. And I can assure you that that local government has not done anything in the past 16 years. But that's one way, one thing. The states, a lot of them are not economically viable. We can adapt two approaches, either by fiat and say, look, let's change the structure of the federating units. We can also adopt economic approach to it and say that a state that cannot meet its overhead expenses will make a choice, carry out a referendum among its citizens, and then probably merge with one of the contiguous states that are viable. So in that means a state like Ogun State, assuming it becomes unviable, can merge with Lagos, and then you have a larger state. But that might be a slow process. We can also look at, must we have 36 states? Can we adopt a more compact federating units? South Africa has only 9 regions. US has 50 states. The state of California is almost bigger than the state of Nigeria. Texas is almost the size of Nigeria. These are economically viable federating units. The approach we adopted is part of the reasons why we are today.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Samale, apologies for holding you up all that while. Can you go ahead now, please?
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Sir, it's a question I would like to ask. That the worst is over. In what area? Is it the ability to pay salary? The price of commodities is going down? Okay, you're not hearing me.
Yeah.
They said the worst is over.
Okay.
Yeah, the worst
Dear
is over.
Governor, in what area? Ability to pay salary, or the price of commodities going down, or the treatment in the place of work on daily basis, production companies closing. So which aspect? And the worst over. We learned yesterday, government again has gone out to borrow. I saw in the paper this morning, a year, our debt has risen to 4.7 trillion naira. So where has the worst ended? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's why there's a question mark there. That is the statement by the governor of Central Bank, and you've heard it also in other places. So we're trying to find out, is the worst really over? Also, we're also looking at that whole timeline of maybe by the end of the fourth quarter, we shall begin to see much more clearly that the end, that the worst is over. But it's an ongoing proposition. And well, going back to Johnson, as we were saying, you wanted to explain one of the lapses. You said something in there. Our delay is among what caused all of this. At when the dollar was 190, the naira to dollar was 190 something.
197.
Yes, and by the time we finally decided to bite the bullet, we had 300. Maybe that's part of why. Well, first of all, you are going to explain what's the problem there. The president was very resistant to the idea of devaluing the naira. And I imagine it's for reasons that are embedded in what you've just explained. But here we have. There are those who are saying he's been stampeded into it, but can it really be stampeding, or the actualities of the situation leave him no room?
Yeah, I think that's what happened. It dawned on everybody that the reserve was being depleted. We're talking about reserve less than 25 billion today. For me, that's even a notional figure. We need to know what is the cash component of that reserve. Mm-hmm. So in that situation, it became apparent to the president and other economic agents that we could not sustain that exchange rate at 197. And again, it also led, the sustenance at the time led some level of suboptimalities where allocations had to be given to individuals and companies. And I've always said this, whenever there's allocation, there has to be some level of favoritism. It doesn't matter who is distributing that, even if you're an angel. Though if you have access to the angel, you will get, you will certainly get more. And that may have also contributed to the economy getting to where it was today. A lot of manufacturing companies were starved of FX. There was a backlog of areas of demand of about $4 billion. Exporters who exported goods to Nigeria could not be paid, and they could not continue to export. So you saw that the economic space was closing in on everybody.
And it was alleged that just a few people, as you've said, such is the nature of the system, were really favored.
Yes, in any situation where there has to be sharing of scarce resource, it's either you share equally, and the sharing equally will lead to inconsequential values being distributed, or you develop a scale of preference. The scale of preference will basically, based on your judgment to some extent, because there will be some level of intuition in it, lack of objectivity or subjectivity. So somehow somebody will be favored, no matter how well-intentioned that sharing formula is. So, but the key thing is this. Let me liken economic management to this, to somebody who had a fracture. If you have a fracture today, most likely your other parts of your body will be strong enough to probably carry you. And then if you delay the administration of medication, the bones could begin to rot. By the time you get, it becomes very bad, and you now decide for orthopedic attention. At that point, the doctors may be saying that to save the rest part of the body, you need to amputate.
Yeah. In other
So
words,
the
timely
earlier,
action
the
is
earlier
always-
you respond to an economic crisis, in any, not just economic crisis, any form of crisis, the faster it is to arrest deterioration. At some point, if we had adjusted the exchange, maybe the exchange rate would have ended around 250. When you delay and deplete further your reserve, then the reserve you need to sustain demand would have been depleted. So you're no longer in a position to meet demand. You see, the purpose of adjusting the exchange rate is that ultimately reduces demand. That's a form of demand management. So when you adjust an exchange rate, it becomes impossible for some people to consume some of the things they used to consume because they can no longer afford it. Remember, you are earning Naira income. Let's use Naira as a classical example. You earn Naira income. I don't know how much your salary is, but let's assume you earn 500,000 a month. And then you buy an item that costs ordinarily $10. And at some point, the $10 is something like 20,000, 2,000 Naira. And then there's a devaluation, an adjustment exchange rate. And then the $10 becomes 4,000 Naira. You, as a rational person, may need to adjust your consumption of that item. So naturally, the demand for that item will reduce. And that is the concept of adjust the exchange rate so you can actually adjust demand. And it also stimulates supply. But even when you adjust the exchange rate, there still has to be some demand. So it is better you do that adjustment when you still have the reserve to meet that demand that is inevitable. Because the greatest challenge you have is that when confidence is punctured, when people are doubting that you have the capacity to meet demand, they will fast forward their demand. All those who wanted to bring in goods next year will bring it in now because they're not sure by next year you can supply them. All those who have their funds in your country will want to take them out now because they're not sure they won't take it out next year. You'll be able to meet that demand. So you have what you may call pent-up demand, or people who want to jump out ahead of the calamity they foresee in the future. But once people have the confidence that this country or this organization has the capacity to meet demand as at when due, in the case of a currency, in this case, your currency, I mean, the foreign currency reserve is sufficient to meet that demand, they wouldn't bother living. In fact, more and more people come into your economy.
Which the central bank governor, I think, mentioned was indeed observable by him and his experts in some instances. But you know what? We'll go on a break now. We're going on a short break. Come back, continue, with your calls. Don't go anywhere, please. Okay, we're still continuing our conversation with Mr. Johnson Chukwu, who's a stockbroker and economist, and he's been looking at the prediction that by the end of the fourth quarter, we should begin to see light at the end of the tunnel. But it doesn't look very, very good. Maybe it really needs people who have a deep understanding as well as faith in our methods and indeed our decision-making process. If all of that is going to come together, as he has indicated in the first half of the program. Now, the other thing is, as you are saying it and as you are explaining it, the government must also have, all sorts of experts. How did we manage to get it so mixed up? Can it all go back to the president? Because at the end of the day, the buck stops on his table. And he has shown from the beginning that he's not a fan of devaluation until, as you said, there was nowhere else to go. Do you think the head of the team has his part in this?
Well, like you rightly say, the buck stops on somebody's table. He should take all the glory and all the blame. Whether they are coming from his advisors or they are coming from his own views about issues. But the most important thing for me at this stage is not what has happened historically. If we want to go through how did we get to this point, there are several reasons which have been articulated, and the government are aware of that. I mean, even the government itself have been trying to explain how we got here. I've heard ministers, some of them, the vice president, some are talking about the Niger Delta crisis, some are talking about the drop in crude price, all sorts. But the key things are this. There are two factors that will determine where a country gets to in economic management. One is exogenous. Exogenous are those factors outside your control, and you have the endogenous. The endogenous factors are largely how you respond to those factors. The exogenous factor in this instance is a drop in crude price.
Okay.
Apart from that, every other thing is endogenous.
Okay.
Every other thing is how we responded, what kind of economic structure did we have ab initio? What were the sources of foreign exchange earnings? What structure did we build over time? And then how did we respond to the drop when it happened? You know, one of the things they teach you about in psychology that the stimulus will elicit a response. The response, there's an intervention before the response. And that's how you decide to react, or how you decide to respond. The response from one stimulus, when it comes to humanity, will not be the same with another personality. So how you respond will determine what
what you are, your circumstances, and all of that.
So,
one moment, please. I beg your pardon. Reverend Dominic, thank you for calling in.
Good morning.
Good morning, Reverend.
Thanks for keeping me. Hello. I think I have a little idea to come out of this challenge. If what we hear is true, that we have 10 ships in presidential, in the presidential fleet, sorry, we have 10 aircraft in presidential fleet. 1 or 10 conflicts to commercial, Air Nigeria. 5 people like the man in your studio to manage it. We have more experts and businessmen. Patrick told me one of their consultants. They can manage Air Nigeria commercially. The flight of Germany, we are Lufthansa. Lufthansa is commercial. I think that is also their official flight. Can't we put all these things? I don't believe in selling our assets. We have a long history. When we bid for GSM here, we had billions of naira. We didn't invest it in our own network. Our own network died. MTN survived. Economic survived. Glo survived. Nigeria's network, with all the whole billions we got, died down. Nobody should try to sell our assets. We have history of since 1999, we'll be selling and selling. The more we sell, the shortage of money. When we sell NEPA, we have millions. NEPA today is in commercial. They are even going to Nigeria government to borrow money. Nobody should try to sell assets to put us into a deep mess. There are things we could do here to revive the economy. If we sell, we go to the same old road. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Dominic. It's a suspicion that a lot of people have, and particularly, do you have, by the way, any sort of an explanation for the observation of the Reverend that all the telco companies survived except for our own original NITEL?
Yep. It's very simple. The incentive scheme, when government runs business, is perverted. And what do I mean perverted? I run a company called Carry Assets. If we, from the beginning of the month to the end of the month, to 25th when we pay salary, do not generate any income, we're not going to go home with anything. All of us will go hungry. So as I sit down here, my colleagues are running on the streets, looking for mandates, executing mandates, so that we earn income for all of us to pay our salaries and take care of our children's school fees. In government establishments, the incentive system is such that whether you work or you not work, you earn your income. So when government invests in business and give it to individuals to run based on appointment, not based on competence, based on some level of social or political affiliation, then those people, one, they do not have the competence. Two, they are not driven. They must not necessarily run that business successfully for them to get their remunerations. In the private sector, you must cover your costs for you to retain your job. In government cycles, you do not need to contribute anything to gain your reward. And for that reason, there is no incentive for people to apply themselves. There are no reward systems that are tied to performance. There are no sanctions attached to non-performance. And therefore, those who sit on government assets see it as national cake.
It's almost like there's no motive to succeed. Almost like there's no motive to succeed. Good morning, Mr. Ade, calling in from Egbeda.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for calling us.
Thank you, sir. I just really want to use the opportunity to explain with an analogy the position we are to an ordinary man. So that because all this, when they bamboozle us with various technicalities in explaining the national economy or national income, we may not actually get the situation right. Because when they say it's improving, what they mean is this. You are going from Lagos to Ibadan. You got to the middle toll gate, your motor broke down. Then you decided to push it so that it can start. You push it back towards Lagos for 10 kilometers, it didn't start. You waited a little, so you told the people, we have pushed for -10. Then you push a little from that point for another 2 kilometers. You said, we have pushed for another 2 kilometers. It is still minus. It is now plus -10. That is -12. So when they are telling us that the economy is improving by checking those indices, the way they are pushing the car backwards is rather unfortunate. We have to go, first of all, push back or start the car and get back to the mid-toll gate before we can continue our journey. So when they are telling us that the things is improving, the ordinary man, they should plan their life and do not rely on whatever these people are pushing out. I know that they will try to do a cover-up. I know there will be pressure on the president. I pray for him that he will be able to actually take us out of this world. Because it is better if it is going to be a U curve, but if it becomes a L curve for us, that is rather unfortunate.
Thank you very much for calling in, Mr. Ade. Everybody has said it, even before now, that it's going to get worse before it gets better. And there are loyalists, even a lot of people. This president came into power on a wave of support and hard decisions that need to be taken. People have continued to back him. But even among those who voted him in, without withdrawing their support, are beginning to get critical and saying that I'm still with the president, but I would have wished that by now we would have come a bit further than we have come. The analogy that Mr. Ade has just made, some of them are beginning to identify that analogy that is it not 2 steps backward, 1 step forward, that kind of a thing. Do you understand it? That this is, because you talked about human beings once they factor into an event?
Well, the way I would see it is this. Like I mentioned at some point in our discussion, that we are stakeholders, that we are all, in fact, because we're all entitled to 1 vote. On the national story, the Nigerian project, we are all equal stakeholders. So we all come together and say, look, one of us, we have to lead all of us. And then we submit our loyalty to that individual. We also have a duty, a civic duty, to point to the individuals areas we think we need improvement in our lives, or areas of discomfort where we need the leader to address. So what is happening today, even among his most loyal supporters, I mean the president's most loyal supporters, that, look, Nigerians are feeling the pinch of economic recession. And they want a president who they have willingly given their mandate to rule over their affairs, to respond timely, to address the discomfort and pain they are going through. So it's, for me, it's not necessarily criticism. These are genuine concerns that citizens are expressing, which, like I mentioned to you, that I believe today the leadership of this country have been jarred into. So, yeah, okay. Action.
They've been jarred, maybe if you want, jarred awake.
Yes.
Let me take Mr. Mohammed calling in from Ghana. Good morning, Mr. Mohammed. I think we lost Mr. Mohammed, who called in from Ghana. Do you personally feel, Johnson, that we could do that which we are doing a lot faster?
Beyond doing what we're doing a lot faster, we could have done it much earlier. But we have several other things we need to do at the same time. Part of the problems we have been treating the problems in silos. You take one policy action, and then expect that policy action will be a silver bullet and address all the problems. We need a cocktail of policies, and I can itemize those policies that need to be begin to implement at the same time.
Okay.
One, that will engender confidence among local citizens and the general confidence among the international community. That one, the government is now market-facing. Two, the government recognizes the challenges of the environment. And three, that the government has enough bullets in its arsenal to confront this economic crisis.
Mr. Williams, thank you for calling back again.
Yeah, I want to make a contribution to this topic then on your television screen. Yeah, good. Thank you, sir, Mr. Yori. Hello, Mr. Yori.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, please.
Okay, good. I think I want to, agree totally in principle with the analyst who had just said one of the good things that we really need to know about the problems surrounding us in Nigeria today. One, I don't think we are really doing the right thing. And in what sense? He did mention something about late application to a wound, which later might probably result into amputation. The man was actually right. But at the same time, do we really approach this issue by finding out the root cause of all these things? In that area, we have failed totally. The present administration is doing its best to ensure that Nigeria comes back to normalcy, but forgetting that we must have forgotten to tell you that this problem has been on for a very long time. And for all these things to become better, we need to pass through a lot of sacrifice, which all of us need to probably put into our culture. But today, we don't do that. Right. If the government pays salaries today, there will still be complaints. If they bring the Naira rate down to 5 Naira today, as an equal to the one that to the dollar rate, there will still be complaints. But what we need to do is to come together and look at these problems and propound solutions. We've heard all our economists suggesting so many things, but the bitter aspect of it was the recent one they did yesterday. Kemi Adeosun, our Honorable Minister of Finance, came out to tell us on the air that there's need for them to bring down this interest rate, the bank charges, because the banks are killing. They are not helping business entrepreneurs at all. And as such, our central bank governor who came all on board to say no with all the 10-member team that converged at that meeting. I don't think they are not working in synergy. I think they need to look at this. We are not consistent. We are not honest. And for Nigeria to move forward, we need honest people in there. No matter what we are doing today, even if the government put billions into this economy, if we don't have honest hands, honest minds to handle it, we will fail. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for calling in. When the idea was mooted that government might be sending a bill to the National Assembly for what has been referred to as emergency powers to be deployed in this kind of a scenario, just what might that entail?
Well, it meant that the government was going to seek for National Assembly authorization to suspend some of the A-Stat laws of the country so that the president could use what he may call the power of decree to intervene in those sectors. When they came up, I had my concerns.
Okay, because those will be cutting through maybe economic rules.
You see, the laws that are implemented in the country are to safeguard the rights of citizens. Is that right? The purpose of law in the first place is to protect and safeguard the interests of citizens and residents. So when you suspend those laws, you're going to be suspending some people's rights. But beyond that, I needed at the first instance, I needed to hear the articulation of policies where the government needed emergency powers. Some of the things they mentioned were not enough justification by my own assessment. I'll give you a classical example. Some of the things that revealed me as a person. Among the things that they say they want the president to have powers to suspend the due process law so that they can give out 50% mobilization to contractors. And the first question I asked myself is that the problem with the contractors is not that the 15% mobilization is not enough. It's that arrears of contract, of bill that is sent have not been paid. So if you pay the bills and you continue with 15% mobilization and you pay on all architects' certificates as at when due, the contractors will have continuous process of executing their projects. So that wouldn't be a reason for you to suspend the law. So when I looked at some of the issues that they mentioned,
yes.
I couldn't see compelling reasons, because the problem you have when you suspend people's rights is that sometimes, with the best of intention, some subordinates of the president may abuse people's rights.
Okay. Mr. Adebayo, calling in from Ikeja, good morning.
Good morning.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I want to, when somebody called in and said he was suggesting a political situation, I was glad. I said, this one will talk the kind of things that we want to hear. Political situation, I think I want to thank God that Nigeria even finds itself in where we are today. And I think it is a good opportunity for the country to take decisions that we would have been dragging. Political decisions, I want to believe, should start with political affairs.
How do you mean?
Led us to where we are.
How do you mean? For example?
For example, the kind of, we were in this kind of situation and people are still buying the kind of cars that they said they bought in the legislature, the kind of money they are still spending. Thank God that God is at work in this country. That is why the likes of the Jibrils and things will spring up. And so we know the secrets and so many things that they have been hiding, which has now come out to the open for us to see. I am sure that when we will be considering the next budget, there will be no problems.
Okay.
Because the problems that have always been there have been revealed. Everybody now will be waiting to see how padding or no padding comes in. Let us use this opportunity, this God-given opportunity, to correct so many things that will have been difficult. There is nobody sitting in that house, in that legislature today, who knows that he has a home to return to at the end of this tenure, and will not listen to what his people are suffering right now. Let us use this opportunity to correct the correctables.
All right, then. Thank you very much for calling in. Johnson, let me return to something you said earlier. When I think I asked the question, do you think they could, the administration could do whatever it is doing to get on top of the situation faster? And you inter alia said, look, the problem of thinking of any one thing as a silver bullet is problematic. We need a number of things to be going on at the same time. Could you return to that theme?
Okay, let's take, for instance, we've mentioned the issue of sale of some of the government assets. The one that came up strongly was the one that Dangote recommended, the sale of Nigerian shares, 51% share in Nigerian liquefied natural gas. And they also, National Assembly President, Senate President, mentioned sale of assets as it relates to investment, countries' ownership of some of the joint venture oil exploration activities. All these sales will help us generate some cash, dollar cash, but that is static. So if you do that alone, and you say you have now earned 20 billion or 30 billion or whatever it is, and we continue to live and use it to just consume, it's just a matter of time it to be frittered away. Which is why I say, like, you are going to say that asset, it must also go into specific projects. The other second leg of what we need to do is that we need to restore investors' confidence on the policy orientation of the government. Outside the country, investors are not quite strong about our policy orientation. One of the things we need to do in that area is that we need to map out some infrastructure that are commercially viable and invite global bidders for concession of those infrastructure. I'll give you a classic example. We are struggling to rebuild the Lagos-Ibadan Express Road. Really struggling. At the current earnings level of the government, we may take us 5-7 years to build that road. We have, over my adult life, the Lagos, Shagamu-Bini Express Road has been a nightmare. A country as big as this cannot build civil work in a period of 10-15 years. When Obasanjo came in, if you remember, one of the ministers cried on that road.
Yes.
Still, 16 years after, ministers are still crying on that road. Some of these routes...
These are policy inconsistencies.
Yes. Some of these routes are commercially viable. The government today, I can tell you, Yori, that our current earnings capacity will not allow Nigeria to develop in the next 50 years if we do not change the structure of our economic administration. One of the things we should do is this. Let's identify critical infrastructure that are commercially viable, that the government do not have the money to build, and invite international concessionaires to bid for those infrastructure and build them and manage them under BOT, build, operate, and transfer. Manage them for 30 years, recover their money. And then when they build those roads, you and I will use the road. Factories that are manufacturing in those localities will pass through the roads. We are going to reduce our cost of doing business in the country. And then we will catalyze economic activities. 2, look at the airports. It's an embarrassment that we don't have a standard airport. And as it is today, the way we are going about it, we're not going to ever build an international airport. I'm sure you travel around the country. I mean, it's an embarrassment. How do you explain that we cannot come out of that when you land in the Nigerian airport, you spend almost the same time it takes you to fly from London to come out of the airport to get your consignment? So we need to concession some of those things. That's one aspect. I mentioned the issue of sale of assets, concession of infrastructure. We need to assess, as a short-term measure, we need to assess foreign currency lending facilities, either from our multilateral agencies like the IMF, World Bank, or from our bilateral partners like China, like Japan, or US or UK. We need to assess offshore lines to first stabilize the exchange rate. And when you stabilize the exchange rate, that's only when you are going to see foreign portfolio investors and foreign direct investors. That is a short-term measure. Then the other ones I mentioned are medium-term measures. They have also long-term measures we have to put in place. When we have come up with an economic blueprint and say, these are the short-term measures we're putting in place, these are the medium-term plans, and these are the long-term plans, even investors will see through that and say, look, this is credible, these guys are serious. And then that will attract the kind of investment we need to stabilize the economy.
Thank you very, very much, Johnson. Mr. Johnson Chukwu, stockbroker, economist, and MD of Cowry Asset Management Limited. Can't thank you enough for giving us the benefit of your insights into this issue.
My pleasure.
I am Yori Folani. I'll see you tomorrow, God willing, with a fresh edition of the program. Bye-bye for now.